Hello, everyone. Good morning. So, who likes gaming, right? And who likes making games? I sure do. I have the best job in the world now. I'm a gaming evangelist for Microsoft. And on top of that, I get to focus on HTML5 games. So, what O'Reilly asked me to come and talk about is what we're calling console-quality cross-platform canvas games. And there's a lot of buzzwords in that. You know, and we really have to redefine what we're thinking about as console gaming now. So originally, you needed dedicated hardware in order to actually play games. You know, you either went to an arcade, or by the time I was 5, I think Nintendo had come out. So, you know, not to date myself or maybe make myself younger, but we played Nintendo and we had Atari and all these things, right? But computers were really slow, and eventually they started catching up, and then you started having console-like games on PCs, and consoles evolved, but it really wasn't until recently that we're starting to see that notion of traditional consoles changing. And really, these devices is what's making that change. We're seeing this proliferation of people who are actually carrying around dedicated gaming devices, and you know these as tablets and phones. And it's a shift between, this is what you think of the traditional hardcore gamer, right? Maybe he's playing World of Warcraft. You know, he's got his custom PC there. But it's actually shifting now to something like this. And this is my kid at 6, 7 months. And before he could walk, talk, or write, he was playing games on an iPad. I mean, Surface Pro. And, you know, on top of that, it's... In all honesty, it wasn't out then. He's 4 years old now. But still, he's growing up in a world where he doesn't even know what it's like not to even, you know, have gaming. So, you know, there's this huge world out there that we can actually tap into, especially as JavaScript developers. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that HTML5, for the most part, is kind of widely adopted. No one's going to slam on the brakes and be like, you know what, we need to go back to plugins, and mobile's going to die off in a few years, and we're just going to go back to dedicated browsers, right? And all this really is possible because of there's no plugins anymore. And there's a huge market in the web. You know, we talk about how the numbers of mobile devices are growing, but really what's happening is that we can't ignore the fact that there's still desktop computers. And that's not going away for a while. You know, sure, we'll have all these new devices that come up, but all of them have a web browser. And as a game developer, the best way for you to actually monetize that is to reach as many people as possible. So why are you going to ignore one group of people who have desktops over mobile when you can actually get to all of them? So we look at this list of the biggest problem right now for HTML5 games really is distribution. And as we go through this list, we can see the evolution of how distribution of HTML5 games is going to happen. So right now, we're at desktop browsers, right? We have IE9+, Chrome, Safari, and Firefox all allow you to do HTML5 games. And you know, HTML5 is such a buzzword, but we're really talking about stuff like Canvas, Request Animation Frame, Audio Tag, all these things. The next evolution is mobile browsers. So Windows Phone, iOS, and Chrome for Android all are able to play the same games that you can play on the desktop. Of course, they're phones, so they're a little bit slower, but it doesn't mean that you have to compromise in your game. Then we talk about web markets. So now we're taking the same web app that lives in a browser, and we're trying to package it up and coming up with a way to monetize it. So we have Chrome Store, and then we have Mozilla's Web Store. And even Mozilla coming out with a phone that's based on a web OS and using their same store on the browser in order to go for the phone is this next evolution. But the last two items are really the most important, and this is where I feel that HTML5 games are going. So we have WebView and native wrappers, and these are things like Cocoon.js, AppMobi, PhoneGap, and iOS using something called Ejecta. And what these actually do is it takes your existing JavaScript code, puts it into a native wrapper, and then you can publish it through an app store. So to the end user, they have no idea that what they're actually using is just, instead of Canvas, it's a hardware-accelerated OpenGL surface. And from there, it looks like a native app. And JavaScript's at the point where the performance is fast enough that it really is the rendering bottleneck. So these kind of solve that. But the last evolution is what we're starting to see now with Windows Store and Windows 8. And that's you're able to take your exact same code, put it into Visual Studio, hit compile, and you now have a native Windows 8 app with the same HTML5 game that you're playing on the web. And from there, you can put it in the Windows Store and monetize it. And hopefully, this is something else that we'll see as a trend in more operating systems, that they start embracing HTML5 as a native way of making apps and allowing you to distribute it in their environment. So I'm going to show off a little demo real quick. I put a link up. Hopefully, for the most part, you guys can all play it on your phone. You know, that's the whole dream about this HTML5 gaming stuff. And while this demo isn't as exciting as Unreal Engine in your browser, the thing about it is that I actually was able to build it myself, and I didn't need a team of 3D developers. I didn't need a huge budget. I built it in 3 weeks, and you'll see it's just a very standard game. This is my Zelda. I tried to take all the things I loved as a kid, but try to bring in these modern casual gaming concepts we see, like level selectors. And you'll see that there's animation. I'm using libraries like Tween Light, which is just a JavaScript library. So I'm able to take the same existing stuff I use to build websites and put them into my game. And so here's the game. We have this little space guy, and his job is just to explore this cavern. And he is fighting against his oxygen, which is always going down. And in the cavern, you can find items, and you can find gems, and you can find aliens. And you're really trying to fight your own greed versus your survival instinct. How far down into the cave are you going to go before you kill yourself? And here I'm playing it with my mouse, with just the keyboard. But of course, I'm on a touch screen here. And I can use touch controls. The same touch controls also work with a mouse. So I've designed this game to seamlessly go from desktop experience all the way down to mobile. But then even better is I can take something like an Xbox controller, and I can plug it in. And now I can control the game through an Xbox controller. And the only thing that's keeping this computer right now, my Surface Pro, from being a console is I just got to plug it into the TV. And I have the same gaming experience that I've had on every console for years now. And what's even cooler is that on Windows 8, the JavaScript's actually talking to C++. So we're waiting for the game API to be standardized in browsers. But what's interesting in this is, since this is a native implementation of an HTML5 app, I'm able to talk to C++, and I can access anything through the USB drive. So that means it could be a custom controller, or it could be something that you create. So the possibilities are kind of endless. So this game was written with a game framework called Impact.js. I've talked a lot about it. I was here last year speaking about Impact. And what's great about Impact is that it really just works on all these different devices. There's not much you have to do to customize it. People get a little turned off because it costs $100. But there are very few cross-platform solutions out there that let you go to all these different devices for under $100. There's also a lot of really great open source game frameworks out there, too, for HTML5 games. I've just had a really good experience with this one. But something else to really look for is there's a new crop of game frameworks popping up. So Phaser is one that's written by a friend of mine, a developer, Richard Davey. And this is a game framework written in TypeScript. And what's interesting about this is that it's actually a port of a really popular Flash framework called Flixel over to TypeScript. And then TypeScript just generates out JavaScript. So we're going to see all these new languages that are using JavaScript as this medium to reach other platforms. So once you compile from TypeScript into JavaScript, you can use a native packager, or you can use Windows 8 and actually make your game feel like a native game. Another really good thing that's going on in the indie game community is this thing called one game a month. And the tagline says it all: make games, not excuses. You know, as a kid growing up, all I wanted to do was build games. And when I grew up, all I wound up doing was building enterprise software and websites and agency stuff. And you know, it was very hard. But now, you know, outside of the fact that I work at Microsoft focused on gaming, even in my free time, I still make games. And it's really about taking an idea, trying to build that idea, and then publishing it, not obsessing over it. A lot of people, when they build their first game, spend so long trying to get it just right. And that's not the right approach. It's just get it out there and see what people do. And the best part about it is that with HTML5, you can put it on the web, let people play it, get a sense for what's going on with it, and then publish it up and put it on a native store somewhere. So I want to thank everyone for watching. If you're really interested in HTML5 games or even Windows 8 gaming stuff, I highly suggest checking out my site. I'm very technical and prolific about writing. I write a lot of content. I've been doing a really big tutorial now on just introducing people to gaming, because I find I do these workshops in New York on the weekends, and there's so many people who come out and they're all like, I want to build a game, but I'm not really comfortable programming. And you know, it's not very hard to pick up JavaScript. I think it's a great language. It lets you do a lot of amazing things, and it's incredibly flexible. So if it's your first language or it's one you've used for years, try sitting down, clearing out some time, and making a game with it. Because I think you look around and you see what's happening with gaming now, and Flash really introduced this whole notion of casual gaming. Mobile is making it blow up. And I think that we could do the same thing with HTML5 games as well. So thank you for letting me talk.